Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 14 of E-commerce Joe. Today, I'm joined by none other than James Dihardjo, who's the co-founder of Merchant Spring and the host of Marketplace Masters. James, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Joseph. Much appreciated.
Now, James, I noticed you've called me Joseph again. We spoke about that on Marketplace Masters, which, by the way, I loved, and it's in a much shorter format, I think, than my podcast. So if anybody has a very short attention span, please check out Marketplace Masters, because it's 10-minute segments rather than 1 or 2 hour chunks like I've done. So I think I've got a few lessons to learn from you, James. In this episode, James, we'll be talking about Merchant Spring. Usually I try and speak to people and say, like, talk about their background and stuff first, but because I'm probably going to share this with some of our clients, hopefully with the view of getting them to use Merchant Spring, I'd like to first talk about Merchant Spring, find out what it is, what you guys do, and then probably afterwards ask you about your journey and, in particular, building a SaaS business from scratch would be pretty cool. So would you mind, I suppose, what is Merchant Spring?
Oh, so it's really, we describe it as it's an analytics dashboard, but its purpose in life is to be as simple as possible. So what it does is, for people that are responsible for multiple marketplaces, so that could be multiple Amazons or multiple Shopifys, eBays, or whatever, it literally just brings in the data into the dashboard in a very easy to digest way. So it'll tell you things like, what are my sales across Amazon UK, eBay UK, and my Shopify? Or what's my account health? Or, what's my top selling product? And things like that. So its purpose is to tell you what's going on across multiple marketplace or e-commerce channels in one place and keep it, as simple as possible. Like, to give you a little bit more beneath the surface there, we pride ourselves on, a 5-year-old child could tell you the profitability of a SKU on Amazon for, let's say, the first 4 days of March, right? So behind the scenes, that would be a very complicated thing to calculate manually and kind of come to by exporting stuff from Amazon, doing a whole bunch of calculations and all this. We make things like that very, very simple on whatever marketplace channel it is you sell on. Does that make sense, Joe?
Yeah, completely. You mentioned that you work on Amazon, and then you said other marketplaces. Are there any, or which do you work with, and are there any that you specifically don't work with?
Yeah, so we connect to probably, including all of the global eBays and global Amazons, over 100 marketplaces, and that's everything from Amazon Japan through to, Bol in Holland, or Cdiscount in France, or, random marketplaces down here in Australia. So in terms of what we do work with, I would say it's most of the larger relevant players in particular countries. Who we don't work with, it's probably a long list too. But, we're in the mind of building what's relevant to our users. So, our goal in life is to provide this one place, see everything for all channels. I think we'll get there in the end, but there's a big list on both sides, what we connect to and what we don't.
Amazing. And so am I right in saying that if someone is a seller, they would connect onto your platform, essentially connect each of their marketplaces to that platform, and then it pulls in the data and shows them a kind of dashboard or something like that of their sales?
Yeah, exactly. And it doesn't just apply to sellers. Like, I think in recent months, we've seen aggregators come onto the space where they're buying up a lot of digitally native brands that actually come with Amazon's, Walmart's, Shopify's. So, we see this same problem across aggregators, brands, also agencies as well. It's a fairly shared shared problem. I guess all of them, the one statement that covers all those types is, people that are responsible for multiple marketplaces, and whatever marketplaces they may be, they can connect to our product and see everything from sales to account health, if that's kind of the lens that they want to look at those channels in. Just to give you an example, there's a guy in Florida who will remain unnamed for this conversation. He has 365 Amazon accounts connected to his merchant spring. So for him, he can kind of within 40 seconds see what's going on across a massive chunk of, seller accounts. And just talking to him, he's like, man, this used to take me like literally hours, in the sense that someone would have to prepare all this information. He'd wait and then he could see it. So yes, you're right, seeing everything in one place, but it's really just for anybody, literally anybody, not just brands or sellers, so to speak.
And this unnamed person in Florida, what sort of services are they offering? Are they like an accountant? Are they a PPC manager? Because there's all sorts of consultants, aren't there? Out there. So what does this guy do, or his team do?
Yeah, so I'd describe him as a full service Amazon agency, and I'd say that that's a fairly common business type. Like you'd see them in South America, in Japan, in Lithuania, like all places around the world. Like that's what he does, which encompasses looking at sales, being responsible for advertising, defending seller health, and that's why seeing everything in one place and being able to kind of see multiple accounts easily is so important to him, if that makes sense.
Yeah, completely. And this seller health that you've mentioned, is this something that pulls in directly from Amazon? Is it a variable that they would give, or is it something that you guys have kind of created yourselves?
Yeah, so because we're an Amazon developer, right? We have to adhere to all of Amazon's developer policy, terms, which means that we cannot derive metrics, we cannot scrape metrics. It means that everything that we retrieve for our users is via the API. And, we've adopted the SP API, so we've moved away from the old school MWS token where the seller would have to generate this thing and then plug this thing into the tool. We actually just run by an OAuth flow, which means the user just logs into the Amazon, grants authority, and boom, off they go. It just allows us easy access to their data, but also, in the latest and greatest Amazon compliant way. If that makes sense.
Yeah. You mentioned scraping. For the benefit of anyone who's not familiar with the term or very techie, what is scraping?
Yeah, so there are some tools out there which I won't name that you may sit in your Google Chrome browser or something like that. You would trigger it, and apps that scrape would literally look at what's on the screen and retrieve data that way. So it's not via a secure or authenticated API, so to speak. If that makes sense.
Yeah. So am I right in thinking if you push F11 when you're in a browser, it gives you the console and it shows you all of the essentially the code that's on the page? It basically copies and pastes certain chunks of that code and stores it in a database, right?
Yeah.
And
that's
so
what we don't do.
Categorically, you guys do not scrape.
Yeah.
But so if you don't do that and you've got a health score, is that something that's pulling straight then from Amazon, or are you, because surely it's not against terms of service if you took like 5 metrics from the API and then created your own variable that combines them?
You're right. It's not against terms of service to create your own, present the data in the way that's easiest for you. That's not against terms of service. So to your point about account health, Amazon actually makes its account health data all available via API, and it will tell you your late shipment rate is blah, your cancellation rate is blah. So we pride ourselves on being a non-opinionated tool. So it's especially important for things like Amazon account health, because you don't want to be too blasé, because then the user might be like, I'm not going to touch that. But you also don't want to be too far opinionated, because it may unnecessarily draw the user's attention to that too often when it doesn't really matter. So with things like account health, we pull it down, present it as the way Amazon defines it. But we might, for example, add a color. So red, when it's like a bad metric, we'll make it red. So get some attention. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And do you guys then offer suggestions on what could affect that? Like not to be opinionated, but if Amazon are saying your refund rate is high, is there some stuff that people could do? And I ask this because I know now that we've connected a few of our kind of client accounts to you guys, because the way it's set up, it's coming through to my email. So I'm getting email notifications from you guys like, hey, like these listings look like they could be blocked, or there's some sort of problem, click here to fix. So like how does that all work?
Yeah, so again, we remain unopinionated, but I would say that for things like suppressed listings, which is a good example, inside the tool, we won't say how to fix it, but we will surface what is wrong. So on some of the suppressed listings, it may be as simple as, the hero image does not have a white background. That's not an opinion. That's pretty much what Amazon is saying by the API is wrong with that listing. So we're just trying to make it easier for the user to kind of get closer to the issues without having to dig and like digging through Seller Central is just a terrible thing. So a terrible thing to do. So, we're just providing it in a easy to digest way. Again, like a 5-year-old child would actually be able to say, these listings are suppressed for these 37 reasons. It's that easy to kind of understand.
Have you ever tested this on a 5-year-old child?
I have actually, and it does really work. So yeah, it's I would say it's much easier than things like Minecraft or whatever games young children are playing.
You've mentioned the APIs that Amazon have and that you guys connect to. Amazon have recently brought out, or they're renovating is it the inventory API?
They're deprecating. They're retiring the MWS API and replacing it with the SP API, which actually has a whole lot more data available to developers. So I think inventory makes up a small part of what they're kind of bringing in. I think the most exciting thing that's happened recently is they've now made brand analytics available via API. So for those of yourself or your clients that remember brand registry on Seller Central, like if you have your brand registry, then in your Seller Central, you'll actually have brand analytics. I think it was formerly known as retail analytics or whatever. That is all available via API. So we can get things now like, mobile traffic, desktop traffic, glance traffic, all this crazy stuff. So yeah, they're doing a whole revamp at the moment. That's for sure.
Oh, that's cool. So you can actually see like who's going onto your listing on different devices and things like that. That's really cool.
That's available now.
That's really cool.
So that'll be in our tool shortly.
And you guys connect to, as you said, like over 100 different marketplaces. So if someone sells, if they're an omni-channel seller in that they sell in loads of places, they can connect all of those stores and marketplaces to Merchant Spring. How do you guys aggregate that? Like, do you aggregate the data, or do you kind of collate it all and split it out? So if someone sold the same product on Shopify and Amazon, is there a way of them linking those two kind of listings?
Yeah, so there's multiple ways to look at the user's business in our tool. So you can look at it through a global view. So to give you an example, we have this thing called top sellers. Very simple, but that top sellers report is actually across all of the channels that are connected. So actually you could see the same product appear twice. Like it could be your number one seller could be 100 units on Amazon, and the same SKU could be 99 units on eBay, which is interesting in itself, because you can see, oh, actually they're equal, like in performance. And then the other way to look at the user's business through our product is each channel in isolation. So you might want to just look at your Amazon UK and everything, top sellers, worst sellers, profit, everything is just in that one Amazon account. So we can look at, the user can look at it in both ways, if that makes sense.
But are they able to, like, I guess, how's it presented? Like, is it in a table, charts, like, and how easy is it for them to like drill into all of it?
Yeah, it's in tables and charts. So everything is drillable. Like, again, like everything in the tool that's blue and has an underline, which is like what typical hyperlinks look like, can be clicked and takes you to the next level down. So like, you might start a list of stores with their profitability, and you click on, I don't know, a number there, and it'll take you one level down and show you what makes up that number. And then you can click one level down and it'll show you the P&L for a particular ASIN or SKU or whatever. So yeah, it's quite, everything within the tool is interconnected. So you can drill or go back up as much as you like, so to speak.
Oh, cool. Question that I don't know whether you could actually answer it, given that it might be against the terms of service of Amazon, but and tell me if it is, because I actually don't know. But you guys have got quite a lot of people that are connected. Are you able to say like how many users or like connections say you've got to eat on the platform roughly?
Yeah, so there's over 6,000, it's probably 7,000, I'd say, stores connected. Sorry, accounts, selling accounts connected, but that is actually across Walmart, Amazon, Cdiscount, Bol, Blocker, the whole works.
Yeah. So if we added someone, for example, and they had, Amazon, Shopify, and Cdiscount, that would count as 3, right? In that count. So you've got 6,000 connections, which is loads. It's a huge pool of data. So I guess the question I was going to ask was, are you guys able to actually see all of that in aggregation? Like, are you able to be like, April 2022 sales across the board have gone up, or are you not allowed to kind of look at that?
Simply by the fact that we're a software provider, of course we can look at all that. It would be our sole purpose in life is to be a software provider. So our purpose in being able to look at data like that is to actually support our users. So we have like a maintenance dashboard which can see at an extremely high level, like across all the active accounts, like sales, like it's like a spike chart like this, but we don't use it to research. Like, we would use that to see, there's no spike today. So at a glance, we could say, maybe there's some issue with the API or something like that. So we actually, yes, we do look at it, but it's actually for the purpose of technical support and infrastructure, like uptime, as opposed to, being, Orwellian, if that's a way to put it.
Yeah, I think it might be, yeah. But I guess I feel like it would be quite interesting, and it's one of the things I was looking at with the accountancy, to be like, can we sit and tell someone like, oh, you're doing a good job, or your business is doing well, or it's doing badly, as much as that's uncomfortable, it's good to know, because then you can do something about it. I guess I'm just thinking outside the box and thinking, are you able to if you saw it, are you able to share it? Is there a way you?
No, so we're not actually, it would be against terms of service completely to take anybody's data, sanitized or otherwise, and then use it for the purpose of benchmarking or anything like that. It'd be completely in breach, which is something we're actually strongly against, because we have to be respectful of all the agreements, if that makes sense.
So is that even if everybody opts into it, you're unable to do it?
Yeah.
You can tell I'm like desperate to do that, but this is
yeah. I think what's different is that agencies that we work with are in a little bit more special situation, and perhaps even yourself, because you work with so many sellers. You are actually authorized to look at a lot of accounts. Like, I think you're another example of that, Joseph. You could see quite a large number of accounts and use that as a proxy for a benchmark. Whereas a brand using our product would only see themselves, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. So moving away from Merchant Spring, I suppose, as a product, yourself, James, as a business owner, I think it's incredible. You've started a SaaS business. And I did ask you, because you're in Australia. We didn't mention that at the beginning. You're down under at the moment. God knows what time it is for you down there. But when you were in the UK, you came to our office and we had a chat. And you told me a brief bit about your journey. What experience did you have with developing software before you started or co-founded Merchant Spring?
So absolutely none. So I'm not a technical person. I have no idea about software or technology or whatever. And also my co-founder has, I think he did a degree in software engineering, but like he's not, he's an ex-Boston Consulting Group consultant. So a full-blown numbers nerd. I'm actually an ex-finance guy. And, we thought we'd just kind of start a business, which initially started as like a professionalized VA business, if you want to call it that. It's a virtual assistant business. We were just helping sellers like compile data and report to them, and kind of like a simplified agency, if you want to call it that. Anyway, we built this tool knowing nothing about software. We kind of hacked it together using friends and stuff. But then, some of our clients and some agencies we're working with were like, hang on, that's actually pretty cool. Why don't you take a hike and I'll use software? We really like 2.5 years into the journey, we kind of stumbled across this software business. At that point, to come back to your question, which was, how do we do this software thing? My co-founder's mate from BCG, we actually hired him. At the time, he was like head of APAC for some IBM division.
What's
Long
APAC?
story, Asia Pacific. So he was some big shot at IBM, and long story, he joined us and then basically hired some of his team in. So yeah, sorry IBM, but yeah, hired some of his team in, and that's how we kind of had the idea, merge it with tech, leveraging off our network.
That's amazing. And what was it that then you guys were initially doing as VAs that people said to you, we don't want this, we want the secret sauce? What was it that you guys were doing originally?
Yeah, so we were doing everything from like defending seller health and kind of listing products on eBay and Amazon, but this is all in Australia. And then at the end of the month, we'd provide them with like a report that says like Amazon sales, blah, eBay sales, blah, Catch sales, this, whatever, other marketplace, this. And that was extremely cumbersome. And then we ended up basically building the tool to essentially snip tool that and put it into a slide, and then off it goes, if you know what I mean. So we built it out of our own, our own problem. We had this problem of having so many accounts under management. How do we, A, see what the hell's going on before the client finds out? And B, how do we give them something that is meaningful but easy to create? Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Because of all the crap we were doing for them.
Yeah. And why did you then start selling software as a service? What were you not tempted to say, we're onto something good here, like keep the secret sauce and maybe like create, I don't know, some sort of super consultancy group?
Honestly, I think we grappled with that a lot. And I think the learning here is, if you're just laser focused on just one thing, it gets the right attention. I think straddling a service business and a software business, it's like, trying to be a Michelin star chef, but also trying to be learning to be a Formula One driver. They're just too polarizing. So, we focus on the SaaS business because, the thinking and the language and the problems is completely different. And I think that's paid off. My personal motto when talking to like agencies, Amazon marketplace agencies, we're making the best agencies better. Like, to have that train of thinking, I don't think I could have landed there if I'm kind of straddling a service business, if you know what I mean, Joe.
Mm-hmm. That's such a great what's the word, like slogan, making the best agencies better. I like it. Where does the name Merchant Spring come from? What's behind it?
I honestly have no idea. I do remember we were the night that we founded this business, we were just having Domino's pizza in my co-founder's mum's office, and someone was like, we need to talk about e-commerce, like merchants. I'm like, oh yeah, merchant. And they're like, yeah, and how do we make like their journey into, you know, e-commerce, like off a springboard or something? And then we're like, just those two, like, you know, springing forward, and it's about the merchant. So yeah.
Interesting. In my head, it was kind of water based, like a spring. And I was like, oh, have you
No.
tried to link that to Amazon because it's a river? That was like, oh yeah,
Ah,
a springboard, nice.
interesting. No, that's a good one. I'll use that next.
No, yours is. So you guys started this SaaS business, and I mean, it sounds like there's quite a few people behind it to begin with. Like there was you and the co-founder, and like how much? I guess if you already had recurring revenue for the consultancy, you kind of use that. Like, how big was the team when you started the SaaS business?
It was really just probably like 10 of us. You know, yeah, you're right. The service business was funding the development of the product. The SaaS business really started off with myself and my co-founder really just selling what we call dreamware. So it doesn't really exist. Like, we kind of had this prototype, but we were, you know, obviously people wanted it, but we're also trying to sell it to other people. And then, we, you know, as the service business kind of grows slightly, we're investing more in the development resource. And, you know, that way we're able to scale to where we are today, like, you know, essentially bootstrapped.
And was that difficult, having no experience with developing software, to actually develop software? Because I've got no idea where I would begin if I tried to do something like that.
Yeah, it is extremely difficult because, you know, I think we hired developers before we hired our CTO. Like, we actually had 2 developer resources. We couldn't really steer them properly. Like, of course we can provide wireframes and designs, but we couldn't provide like questions like, oh, how do we provide a data architecture that everything needs to be in before it's shot out to the tool? Like, how do we harmonize everything? Or how many microservices should we have? Should we even have microservices for all the different channels? Like, those questions we couldn't answer. So that's when we just thought it's too hard. We had to hire a CTO, which is how that story about the CTO kind of comes into it. But it's too hard.
And could you have, if you'd hired the CTO first, would you have been in a separate problem in that they would have nobody to manage? Because I guess I'm not, having not run a SaaS business, like, if you hired a CTO, that's quite a big title, right? If you've not got a team there below you, would somebody want to come in, or would you have said, okay, let's get a CTO and 2 developers? Or could you have just started with just a CTO for, 3 months, 6 months, something like that?
I reckon if I was to do it again, I definitely would have hired the CTO first, only because through this journey, I've realized you end up with a lot of tech debt. So the CTO has to go back and revise or restructure certain things. So yes, you could do the CTO first, but they'd have to be a certain type of CTO. I think we're fairly lucky that the IBM kind of style, if you want to call it that, is even the most senior dudes have come from like being hands-on with the stuff, if that makes sense. Kind of like partners in accounting firms, previously were auditors, living in client offices or whatever. So yeah, I think it is possible, but it had to be, it would have to be one of those old school CTOs that's done the work, the hard work before. Perhaps, yeah, I'm not a tech guy, but I think there's a few different routes to the CTO title. Has to be the one that, ex-IBM as an example.
Yeah, no, it's so cool. Like, I think honestly, I didn't know until I asked you in person, like, oh, how did you do it? And you're like, I had no experience, you know. It's really impressive because I just don't know where to start with it, or wouldn't know where to start. So you kind of had two developers and then a CTO. How difficult was it to sell the product or to grow it when you were getting started? And what was the first sale? Do you remember that first sale for the software?
Yes, look, it was incredibly hard. I won't count the initial clients that said, "Hey, give me the blight." I mean, that's not a sale; they're already kind of service clients, right?
Mm.
The first sale was actually an American guy, and he saw it, and we're like 20 seconds into the demo, and he pulls out his Amex, and he's like, "I'll buy it now, like I'll buy it right now," because it allowed you to see like 5, 6, 7, 20 Amazon US accounts side by side. Funnily enough, he's an agency. And he's like, "I'll pull out the Amex," and we're like, no, take an extended trial, hang up the call, and we're like, we don't even have a way to accept cards. Like, you know, I'm like, we're like, what are we even doing? Like, we hadn't even built the payment gateway yet. Like, you know, yeah. But to get to that point, behind it is like a lot of objections, denials. Because I think what we're doing is, at the time, is so weird. Like, it's not like, at the time, I think Amazon was just professionalizing. So the concept of agencies and consultants was still quite new. You know, marketplaces were still appearing in various places. So like the problem didn't really exist. And then people who had the problem didn't know they have the problem. I think only now it's becoming easier because there are a lot of agencies, there are a lot of marketplaces, people that are on multiple marketplaces. Like back then, man, it was, yeah, bloody hard. I tell you, like really hard. So.
And how were you, or even now, how do you get clients? Because I imagine, obviously, the most obvious one is you would Google like Amazon agencies, right? But there's only so many pages of Google you're going to actually go through. Like, how you guys must have a sort of strategy, or how does that work?
Yeah, I would say so we don't do any advertising at all, like none. We invest all of our resource in creating content, and it's mainly just, Marketplace Masters is an example. My co-founder runs a similar thing with webinars. We just shoot out content all the time, and even it's like very small bits of content on Twitter or whatever, and partnerships. So we do a lot of we try and do 2 webinars a month, and with various partners, and we even share lead lists with all our all our panelists as well. So it's just all through partnership and content activity. And then recently, like you said before, I came to London. We went to the Prosper show in the US. Like it's all through that. And I think what I'm seeing is there's more agencies than more agencies than I can poke a stick at the moment, and it's just continuing to grow.
It's that like famous phrase that's like, during the gold rush, you're better to be the one that sells the shovel rather than digging up the gold. I feel like so many people are doing that, but it's because there's a need there.
That's it. Except we're selling the shovel head to the people selling the shovels. So that makes sense.
That's a very good analogy. What's been the most difficult part of that journey in terms of creating a SaaS business?
If I'm really honest with you, Joe, like I think the most difficult part was finding the right people to hire. And I think that's relevant to all startups, like to find people that have been so early on in the journey is very hard. Like you can get a very senior marketing person from a well-established company in the same space, but if you put them in this seat because it's so early in their journey, it doesn't work. Like you need to find someone who's been able to drive the car and change the tire at the same time, right? that's hard to do. You can find lots of people that can drive cars, but someone who can drive it on two wheels and change the rear tire, it's very hard. So yeah, that's been the biggest challenge, and I think it continues to be a challenge, given that we have like this, what do they call it? The great resignation at the moment. Like people are being really picky with jobs, like that doesn't help. So yeah, that people's definitely been the hardest thing for us.
I find that so interesting that you're saying that, considering you're a SaaS business. Like for myself running a service business, that I'm like, yeah, people, and I'm like, these SaaS guys have got it easy. The people selling physical products got it easy because it's physical products, it's digital products. That's very interesting. And when you say, the people that you're about driving this two-wheeled car and changing the tire, is that developers that you're kind of struggling with or looking for?
No, it's anybody. And I mean, anyone from our technical support to customer success, salespeople, like it's very different. Like they have to be able to work in a situation where the business is not well known and solving a problem that maybe people don't even know about. Like our CTO, his name is Victor, by the way. So Victor used to work for IBM, but it's their cloud garage. So cloud garage generally works with businesses that are not even at MVP stage. So he was already in that mindset, like from his time at a massive corporate. At a like a non-technical level, like the customer success, so people helping clients on board the tool. Again, we ended up hiring Ruth, who's actually ex-Atlassian. So I don't know if you know this Australian company called Atlassian.
I do actually. Funny enough, someone mentioned them last week, and I was like, yeah, I know them because they were HipChat. I think they had a tool called Hip, which is like a competitor with Slack, and they were just like, that's so random. Yeah, Atlassian, but they're not really so. Is it Jira or something else? Is another part?
Jira, yeah. Jira is the developer, basically a Kanban, but developed in such a way it's designed for developed software engineering teams. But yeah, we thought, okay, well, let's just hire someone who's done this journey. So this lady Ruth, who used to work for Atlassian, was there during their kind of like hyper growth trajectory. So it brought her in, and it's like, yep, that's kind of been the kind of hiring model we've adopted. Like go and hire people, yes, have the right experience, but have also been through that kind of zero to hero journey. That makes sense.
And does that mean you end up paying above the sort of market price of a team member if you're hiring them with experience like that? Or
yeah, and I think it's because some of those companies can attract some serious talent, like Atlassian, like Slack, all those dudes, all those people just attract crazy talent. You gotta pay market or above, or if you're not paying at market, there's got to be some other benefit like flexibility or work from anywhere or whatever. So yeah, it's super competitive. So even if you do find the right hiring model, you just got to be prepared to pay for it. But in saying that, like hiring the right person is, it's worth every dollar, like, because they come with it. You end up learning from them, if that makes sense.
Yeah, completely. I find as well, hiring the wrong person ends up costing you more than the financial cost of paying them, because there's the time cost of hiring the right person that you could have had. There's the headache of training the person and then not understanding stuff. Then eventually, there's the burden of getting rid of them, which is quite stressful, especially, depending on the time of the year. You then have, and when I say time of the year, I mean, if you're approaching Christmas, you don't want to sack someone because you look like Scrooge or something, kind of getting rid of someone before Christmas. And then potentially you've got the problem of unpicking all of the work that they've done wrong in the first place. Like it's a huge cost to hiring the wrong person. And I say that through having been burnt, I think, a few times. You mentioned, I think, quite an interesting story in terms of who you've got working for you in that hiring process, because your team, especially like is it the customer support team that help you there? Am I right in thinking they used to work for you when you were like your agency?
Yeah. So some of them, So Ruth is an example of a fresh hire from Atlassian. What's interesting is some of the other support people, they were with us when we were an agency, and so they know Amazon like pretty well. They've actually worked with sellers to run their selling accounts, used our product, used Merchant Spring to actually do their job. And now they're helping other agencies with Merchant Spring. So it's kind of like, yeah, it's a perfect synergy because they've come from the environment that our clients are in, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So they talk with like extreme credibility, and there's basically no training because they've used our product to be an agency, and now they're helping agencies. So it's a nice full circle, if you want to put it that way.
It's so cool. And I feel like they must have a really good understanding of the tool, right? It's not that they've just been hired, they don't know what they're talking about and they're following a script. They've used it and almost helped build it, right?
Yeah, and some of them have helped shape what it is we surface, because they're like, they're thinking as an agency all the time, like, how do I see this, or what would I like to see at a glance, or what's really important to me. I think some of the things they ask for, is without those inputs, like we wouldn't have been so attractive to some agencies early on. And it's been, they're all based in the Philippines, in Manila, and they're already, without some of their inputs, like it was critical to being valuable early on to agencies.
Now, am I right in saying that agencies are probably your primary like customer or target customer in that, the agencies will work with the e-commerce sellers and connect to your platform? Or do you have mainly sellers and then a few agencies?
Yeah, it's a mix. Like, it's sellers, it's agencies, it's aggregators, and as you found out, like a couple of e-commerce accountants in the US as well. But yeah, e-commerce educators. There's one in the Middle East that has their own version of our product with different branding, and they give a license out to every one of their students. So, it is everyone like that's on the periphery. It's also the brands itself, but even if it is consultants and educators and agencies, that their end user that has a login to their version is a brand anyway, or a seller. So yeah, it's sellers and solution providers.
It's interesting you mentioned aggregators, because I spoke with the guys at Global Wide Advisors in the prior episode to this, Rob Salmon, and he did this whole research piece on the rise of Amazon aggregators. I appreciate you might not be able to name names or anything, but with these aggregators, have you seen, like, are they doing a good job? Because for me, I imagine they're buying up all of these businesses, but I'd love to know, is it actually working? Like, are these businesses just kind of falling off a cliff when they take them over?
So, good question, Joe.
Because you must be interested. You must look, even if you're not allowed.
I think anecdotally, through speaking to clients like that are aggregators, some of them have said this is hard, and I don't think that that's new news to anybody. Like, everybody knows that it's hard. I think that I wouldn't say that the businesses are tanking. I think that the businesses, and all credit is due to those business owners that sold to them. Like, I think those people have built some seriously good businesses to be in a position to be acquired. So I would say the businesses that have been sold to aggregators, that aggregators own, are good and are robust. But I would say that aggregators are now, upon reflection, having gone down this road for a few years or a year, they realize now that operations is critical. And it's, not everything can be solved by an MBA degree in a spreadsheet. Like, you do really need someone with hardcore Amazon knowledge. So I think the model could work. I think the hype around it has meant that, the way that the brands that have been acquired have been operated hasn't been great. I think everybody knows that. That's public. And I think that's being addressed. Like, I can, through conversation, and through you can see job postings as an example of who they're hiring for, or whatever. I think it's changing. So I think it's clear that whatever they've done is not working, but I think they're addressing that. And look, I think there's a lot of people out there saying aggregation model is difficult, but then I say, yeah, it is. But historically, if we go back 50 years, there's always been business brand houses that own various brands. It's common in beauty, fashion, automobiles. It's a model that exists. I think it just needs maturing in this space before it can actually be truly viable. If that makes sense.
Yeah, amazing. Great answer. Thanks, James. Final question, because I'm aware. What's the time for you there? Is it midnight?
It's 10:57 p.m. So I think this will have to be the final question.
I say I've got you for a couple more hours. That's fine. No. So final question on Merchant Spring. What's the future hold for you guys? Like, what's next? Are there new features you're planning on developing? Are you new marketplaces? Like, what's the focus?
Yeah. So every 3 weeks we release new features. I think your friend Stephen will testify to that. So I think for us, release new features every 3 weeks. That is a must do. And I think, 3 weeks ago, we released Vendor Central just to prove a point. Whether that's connectors or actual features, it's really up to the demand side. But yeah, we will continue to release features. And, our goal is to make the best agencies better. And I think that can only be achieved through staying true to what we do, which is solving the visibility problem, keeping it simple, making life easier. And that'll be features and connectors. Connectors makes us more relevant in markets. Like in Holland, we went with Bol, Blocker, Amazon, and eBay, makes us relevant. In France, we went with Amazon, eBay, Cdiscount, FNAC, and Darty, makes us relevant. So we need to do more of that with more features, if that makes sense.
Yes, amazing. Making better sellers better?
Making the best agencies better.
Making the best agencies better. That's a great way to end it.
Doesn't ostracize anyone.
James, if anybody wants to find out more about you or Merchant Spring, what's the best thing for them to do?
Just hit me up on LinkedIn. I'll reply within a couple of hours. It's my go-to channel.
Oh, amazing. All right then. Well, thanks so much, James. I will put various links in the notes on YouTube. Yeah, thanks so much for having me. Well, thanks for having me before on your but thanks for joining me.
All right, sure, my pleasure.
Cheers, James. Now I've got to stop it. How do I stop?